communist dictators.
They're on the Welcome Wagon Committee, yeah.
Ostensibly, they were riding shirtless and bareback across Siberia or some such thing to enjoy each other's company.
Yeah, after swimming in a cold pond, yes.
What should we expect to come from this, if anything? And also, what should America be doing to exacerbate the internal contradictions in both of these communist countries? You know, it was internal contradictions in addition to Reagan's peace through strength that ultimately led to the downfall of the Soviet Union. Glasnost and perestroika was not something Gorbachev wanted to do. It was something he thought he was compelled to do to try to keep that empire afloat. And of course, it just hastened the implosion. What can we do, if anything, to hasten the implosion of communism in Russia and China? For more on this, pleased to be joined by Gordon Chang, author of The Coming Collapse of China and the Great U.S.-China Tech War. You can follow Gordon Chang on Twitter at Gordon G. Chang, C-H-A-N-G. Gordon G. Chang is his handle on Twitter. Gordon Chang, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Well, thanks so much, Dan and Amy.
What did you make of the preemptive strike rhetorically by National Security Council spokes being John Kirby to say if what comes out of this Putin-Xi meeting is some talk about a ceasefire, an embrace of the Chinese peace plan, then that should be dismissed out of hand because, of course, that would seek only to cement Russia's illegitimate territorial gains. Is that the right posture for America to take?
I think it is. I rarely agree with John Kirby, but I believe that he's right. There's two reasons. One he gave, which was it would ratify Russia's possession of Ukrainian territory as a practical matter. The second is that at least for the moment, Ukraine has the initiative on the battlefield. That can change, but at least now Ukraine has the upper hand. So a ceasefire actually helps Russia. Now, I think that China has proposed a ceasefire because they understand what is going on in the war. They wouldn't propose something that would undercut their ally effectively, which is Vladimir Putin's Russia.
Well, but also, I mean, aren't both of them just posturing too, but pretending that to be men of peace and international order when they're really just, they're both rapacious and revanchist in their own ways, and this is just, maneuvering to stick it to the West, starting with us.
I agree 100% with that. Clearly, Russia invaded Ukraine. China will not say that. They blame NATO, which is incredible for this, which, it's not NATO troops that are advancing on Kyiv. It's the Russian troops. So we have to understand, Confucius said, and I think it's the most important thing he said, you have to call things by their proper names. And the proper name for this is a Russian invasion of Ukraine, and China needs to acknowledge that. And if it doesn't, it means that China is a combatant in this war.
I went to a talk a couple weeks back given by Congressman Mike Gallagher from Green Bay, Wisconsin, who's a Marine, and he's heading up, as you know, the Select Committee in the House on the Chinese Communist Party. And speaking about calling things by their name, he made the point to say, yeah, this is why we're calling it the Chinese Communist Party, the House Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party, because what we're looking at is Chinese Communist Party activities. And he went through the various buckets, right, military, economic, cultural, and he wasn't particularly sanguine about where we stand with the Chinese Communist Party as it pertains to any of those aspects of policymaking and power distribution. What is your take? Are we doing the things that we need to vis-a-vis the Chinese Communist Party militarily, culturally, economically?
No, we're not. And because of that, we're in mortal danger. China, in fact, is preparing for war on Taiwan, Japan, Philippines, India, or even the United States. And we have a political establishment in Washington, and it's not just the Oval Office, it's the Pentagon as well, both parties, certainly the elites in New York, who don't understand the urgency of the situation. And that means the Chinese can take us by surprise, and this could lead to the end of the United States. I know a lot of people would think that that's not possible, but China has infiltrated the U.S. There is now credible information to suggest that the Biden family has been bribed. So really, we are at a point where we're not being defended by the president, who has the obligation to do that. And so we are in mortal danger, and Americans, I believe, do not understand it. I know it's hard for them to understand, but we didn't understand Osama bin Laden. We didn't understand the Japanese, and we know what happened in 1941 and on 9/11.
So, Gordon Chang, do you think that, that's a pretty bold statement that we're going to be going to World War III? Do you think that's what they were meeting about yesterday, Xi and Putin?
I think
getting ready for it?
Because we're not ready for it. The issue is whether we go to World War III is not in the hands of China or Russia. It's in the hands of one person whose name is Joseph Biden. Biden can deter them because we have the power to do that. But also, unfortunately, we're not exercising that power. And the Chinese believe, and they might be wrong, but the Chinese believe that they can control outcomes in the Oval Office. So this is extraordinarily dangerous for us at this time. And China will attack if it gets the green light. And the green light is going to be determined in Ukraine. If Russia holds on to Ukrainian territory, China will see a green light to attack a neighbor. If Russia is defeated, I believe China will shrink back.
What are steps to deter China that we could be taking that we're not taking in any of those buckets? Perhaps something asymmetrical that they wouldn't anticipate us doing?
There's a whole range of things, but they don't anticipate us doing anything, essentially, because they believe that we don't have the political will to, for instance, cut trade, cut investment, cut technical cooperation agreements, get the Chinese off of our farm and ranch lands. But, in terms of deterrence of China, it really is a question of what they believe President Biden will do. Now, if Biden were to say from the Oval Office in front of a television camera, I will defend Taiwan, and if nobody in his administration contradicts him, like has occurred in the past, then the Chinese might sit up and take notice. But right now, they're not doing that. And they actually tell us we're not deterring them. So we should take the Chinese at their word.
I was talking to a guy from Canada the other day, a businessman from Canada, and he was saying that China, the Chinese communists, sort of in the same way that they've infiltrated the academy and corporate America in this country and incentivized them to cast their future with China in China, corporate America in particular. They have done so in Canada. They say the guy's saying Vancouver is essentially controlled by Chinese economic power. I mean, what's your sense of what's happening north of our border there in Canada?
Well, China is more influential, not just in Vancouver, but also in Ottawa, where it counts. And clearly, Justin Trudeau has known of the malign Chinese interference in the last general election and has done nothing about it. Trudeau says that Chinese activities did not influence the outcome, but I don't think he can know that. And there is credible reporting to suggest that it did affect the outcome. So yes, we have a neighbor which is closer to Beijing than it is to Washington.
What is?
By the way, Biden's going to Canada, I guess Thursday or something like that.
What are the sorts of things that the Chinese Communist Party is alleged to have done to weigh in on the Canadian election?
They supplied a lot of money, and they most important propaganda in terms of certain candidates of the Liberal Party of Justin Trudeau. But this has been something that has been going on for quite some time. And really what we have got to do is we have to have honest conversations with the Chinese about what's going on in Canada. And Justin Trudeau needs to have those conversations as well.
Seems like another guy incapable of doing anything in furtherance of his country's interests. You wrote a book called The Coming Collapse of China, and it in part addressed what I started out this segment mentioning the internal contradictions of these totalitarian communist regimes that essentially make it impossible for them to realize the strength of their numbers or the strength of their military in the case of the old Soviets. And so are there things that we could be doing to exacerbate those internal contradictions on behalf of the Chinese people, on behalf of Hong Kongers, that we're not doing?
The one thing we need to do is talk to the Chinese people. Stop talking to Beijing, talk to the Chinese people. Mike Pompeo, when he was Secretary of State, gave a talk at the Nixon Center in July of 2020, and he said that the thing that he did, which irritated and angered the Chinese the most, was when Pompeo directed his comments to the Chinese people. We have allowed Voice of America, Radio Free Asia, and the rest of that to atrophy. We need to realize that the Chinese are conducting propaganda war against us. They're extremely effective. They put a lot of resources into it, and we need to do the same thing because this is Cold War II.
Are there any dissidents to rally around, like we rally around Solzhenitsyn, again, harkening back to Soviet Russia? I mean, I know Jimmy Lai in Hong Kong, but in mainland China, are there dissidents that we should be rallying around, that we should be amplifying their activism?
There are. China is run an extremely coercive state, and so many of those dissidents are in jail or in concentration camps. But in effect, there's potentially 1.4 billion dissidents. We saw this in those extraordinary protests after the November 24th fire in Urumqi, where protests broke out spontaneously across China. The Chinese people are not happy right now. They are intimidated, of course, but they're not happy, and we can exploit that.
He is Gordon Chang, author of The Coming Collapse of China and the Great U.S.-China Tech War. And again, follow him on Twitter at Gordon G. Chang, at Gordon G. Chang. Gordon Chang, thanks as always. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Dan and Amy.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Connect with Dan and Amy using the AM560 mobile app. Download it today at 560theanswer.com/mobile.
If I could be you.
And you could be me?
For just 1 hour.
If you could find a way
to get inside
each other's mind.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
We've all felt left out. And for some, that feeling lasts more than a moment. We can change that. Learn how at belongingbeginswithus.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Walk a mile in my shoes. Attorney Joe Cordell.
Business owners and professionals face special challenges in divorce court. In addition to everything else going on, they have to contend with allegations that they are earning more than they are, coupled with claims on their business or practice itself. Clients with assets depend on their divorce lawyer's skills in these matters, and that's why it's so important to hire someone that has those skills.
Schedule an appointment with one of Cordell & Cordell's Springfield area attorneys. 2815 Old Jacksonville Road, Suite 103, Springfield, Illinois, 62704.
Guys, a lot of people talking about testosterone, but do your homework.